stream that there's no audio. I just pushed a button. There will be audio now. Thank you, Vagabond John. Commenting on multiple accounts. My God, thank you for helping me out. The live stream, I run it off the same computer that Bill's live stream is run off of, and the settings are a little bit different. So thank you for shooting me that message. You can call, text the show. I'd love to have you. 608-321-1670. You can tweet me at Wisco Grant. You can comment on the live stream as well. Now you should be able to hear the show on the live stream. So now you can actually interact with the show. Looking forward to talking a lot of football tonight. Jesse Temple, The Athletic, going to be here in hour number 2. I recorded with Jesse a little bit earlier in the afternoon just because that's what works best for his schedule, and it's not a big deal. There's typically not crazy breaking Badger football news between 2 p.m. and 5:30 when we air the interviews, the way that there might be with the Packers if there's practice or if there's press conferences, or the way there might be with the Brewers if there's an injury announcement when, the manager and everybody first gets to the ballpark to meet with the media. So it's not a big deal. I talked with Jesse earlier this afternoon at 2:00, and I actually texted Jesse. I said, we're going to get into some good stuff today. I always really try I don't free ball it. When we have Zach on, sometimes I free ball because Zach is my coworker. I see him all the time and we have a little fun. Man, when we get 10 or 12 minutes with Jesse, I really want to make the most of it. And I told him today, I said, now that we finally have a game to talk about, there's so many things that I'm so excited to ask you. So you're going to hear that conversation. Jesse is the best. He will join us in hour number 2 around 5:30. I have a Packers topic that I am so excited. I was pumping gas at Quick Trip this morning, just laughing like, yeah, this is going to be a good day. It's going to be a good show. I have a Packers topic that I can't wait to throw at you in about 25 minutes. But as I said, I do want to start with the Brewers. Now, last night's Brewers loss in 12 reminded me a lot of Sunday's loss to the Reds. Now, that game, I think, ended in the 11th. I think it went into extras, and then it took one extra inning. It went through the 10th and then through the 11th. I believe. I don't think it went 12. It doesn't matter. Last night's game didn't just feel like Sunday's game because the Brewers lost in extra innings, although that's, a big similarity. The offense just went dead. Sunday, the Brewers went 0 for 21 across the final 6 innings of that game. They only had 4 base runners in the final 6 innings, and 2 of them were the ghost runners. So, yes, that statistic would indicate there was a 10th, and then there was 11th, and then the game ended. Last night, over the last 7 innings of the game, the Brewers had 1 hit, and it probably should have been an out if Michael Ciani just holds onto the ball in center and doesn't spin his glove and it doesn't come shooting out. Like that was 99% an out. It was just that 1% at the end where the umpires, I believe by the letter of the law, correctly ruled it. Although spiritually, it's like that seems like that should be a catch. We've experienced that in the NFL a lot of times, not so much in baseball. We got to experience it last night. That was the only hit the Brewers had in the final 7 innings of that game. Last night felt a lot like Sunday. I'm going to give you a take about last night's game and what happened. But to be clear, just off the jump, like I realized the Brewers aren't going to win every game. And really last night was about their offense going dead, right? I don't think it was some dark mark on the bullpen. In fact, I thought relief pitching was excellent last night. That's as good as Devin Williams has looked in a little while. I understand the Brewers can't win every single night. So I'm going to do a little whining here. It's a talk show, though. I understand. My perspective on the Brewers is a good one. I want to whine about something. I want to complain about something. Because for years, my strong support of Craig Counsell and the way that he managed this Brewers team and managed it to great success, right, was met with pushback. A little more pushback every year. They would come up short in the postseason, and there'd be a little bit more pushback, a little bit more skepticism every year. And I think that's natural. We saw the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. We saw the same thing with McCarthy. If the Packers keep coming up short in the playoffs, I think we're going to start to see more of that every year with LaFleur. That's just natural in sports. Every year that the team comes up short of the ultimate goal, there's more skepticism assigned to the parties involved. I get that. But my support and my love for the way that Counsell managed this team with every year that passed was met with more skepticism. And it was always the old school baseball minds, right? That's where the thought, that's where that school of thought would originate from. The old school of thought was always like, let the starter go. What happened to the days of real baseball players? And then we'd bring up Randy Johnson for some reason. What happened to the days of real baseball players playing real baseball? Way too many home runs, way too many strikeouts. We're obsessed with launch angle and exit velocity. Not enough balls in play. There's no station-to-station baseball anymore. What happened to real baseball? Or my personal favorite, you hear this every time the Brewers would lose a close game. Sometimes you just got to play for one run. Craig Counsell, he never knows how to play for just one run, which was normally code or normally just the cliche that would get thrown around when some Brewers fans thought you should have dropped a bunt down in that spot. Whether it was in extra innings or in the 7th, 8th, 9th, late in the game when you had a scoring opportunity. Counsell, he doesn't know how to manage for just one run. What does that even mean? It doesn't even mean anything. But I heard that for years. I watched the Brewers and the Cardinals last night in extra innings. I watched the Cardinals drop down a bunt in the top of the 10th and fail to score. I watched the Brewers drop a bunt down in the bottom of the 10th, Joey Ortiz, and then attempt to drop down another bunt, Bryce Terang. And like the Cardinals, the Brewers in the bottom of that frame also failed to score. Right? I watched both teams last night get so far into their head. Oh, we just got to get him over. We just got to get him. We got to get that ghost runner over to third base with less than 2 outs. We got to move him over. We got to get him into position. We got to put the ball in play to the right side of the infield, or we got to get the ball in the air out to the outfield. It's just like, oh my God. Play baseball. Just play baseball. Just play. Get in the box, swing the bat, and play honest to goodness real baseball the way that you always play the sport, the way that you play the sport from the first inning through the 9th inning. Just play the sport. Play baseball. Because that wasn't baseball from the Cardinals or the Brewers in that 10th inning at all. Both teams got so far into their head, they shrunk the field of play into this tiny patch of grass. It was smaller than even the whole infield. It's like they shrunk the field and they minimized the game to this tiny little patch of grass in front of, beside, and slightly behind the pitching mound. Like the outfielders in the 10th inning last night, they could have laid down in the outfield. The ball was never getting there. The hitters and the way that they were thinking, the way that that game was being played in the 10th inning, the ball was never leaving the inner circle of the infield. That entire 10th inning was like one long, continuous Sal Frelick at bat. Just play baseball. That's what I tweeted last night at Wisco Grant. Just swing the bat and play normal baseball. These two teams, they got so into their head. Well, if we just get the ghost runner over from second to third, if we can get him over with less than 1 out and get him into position, we can get the ball to the opposite side of the infield. We can set this up, just play baseball. Just play baseball. Just play baseball. I think the ghost runner is actually a really good addition. I know we were skeptical of it. I know some people still hate it. I would argue that the people who still hate it just hate it to hate it because it's easy to hate stuff. And I trust me, I get that. I think it's good. It gets games moving. It finishes extra innings games more quickly. It oftentimes means teams have to use less pitchers, which is great. Last night, you really don't see extra innings go 12 anymore. If they go 11, right, it's a little bit out of the ordinary. God, if they go 12 or 13, that's really rare. I think the ghost runner rule is good. A negative side effect of the ghost runner rule is that the teams completely and totally lose their mind. Oh, we're starting the inning with a runner on second. Well, the goal is not now to drive that runner in. It's, well, we got to get that runner over to third with less than 1 out. We got to get that runner into position. And then and once they get into position, the goal is not to just swing the bat like you normally would. The goal is to just put the ball in play. And that's when you see Bryce Terang hit a 50-mile-an-hour ground ball right at the feet of the pitcher. Like, what even was that? I actually would have preferred him to try to bunt if that's the type of contact I knew he was going to get. Like these ghost runners, they get the players so far into their head and they get the managers so deep into their clipboard and into their binder. Just play baseball. God, it drives me nuts. Drove me nuts in the 10th inning last night. And it's funny. It's a little bit of a full circle moment because for years, right, Brewers fans with Craig Counsell would complain that he wouldn't drop down a bunt, that he wouldn't put the hit and run on, that he wouldn't do all the things. He wouldn't play real baseball. It was all analytic-driven drivel about launch angle and exit velocity. And the irony, the funny thing is now we've come so far full circle where teams are so caught up in just putting the ball in play and bunting and moving the runner over and putting the hit and run on. We've gone so far the other way that this isn't baseball either. This is some other weird version of Tetris where we're trying to move run. The goal is to get the runner home. It's not just to get the runner over to third with less than 1 out. It's not just to get the runners in motion. It's like, so frustrating. So frustrating last night, especially on a night where you got another home run from Jackson Churio. right? And Joey Ortiz is hitting with pop. Rhys Hoskins hitting with pop. You just haven't gotten much from the first base position this year at all, and you finally get a little bit from Rhys Hoskins. Like, oh, God. And you don't take advantage of it. Devin Williams had his best outing in a while. You don't take advantage of it, right? It's frustrating. It's frustrating. That's the type of game where you look back and you wish you had. And the same with Sunday, right? Sunday's game against Cincinnati. And I know that was the series finale. They'd already won the first 3 games. And I know last night at some point, I was just kind of grateful that the game ended. Kind of felt like the sweet release of death around 9:15, 9:30 last night with Elvis Peguero on the mound. But we've gone full circle now. In an effort to completely remove ourselves from baseball based in launch angle and exit velocity and the 2 or 3 true outcomes, right? We've gone so far full circle where now these offenses, they get gifted a runner on second base to start an inning. And the goal isn't now to drive the runner home. It's to move the runner over, to get the guy in motion, to hit the ball to the right side of the infield, to get the runner over with less than 2 outs. We hear that all the time. Well, man, what a massive play. If you can get that out, if you can get that first or second out with that runner not getting over. No. The goal is to score the runner. Everything else is a means to scoring the runner, but we're so caught up in the means. Oh, it can get really ugly in extra innings. And that's not what this rule was intended to do. This is not the outcome that the creators of this rule had in mind. And this isn't even an anti-bunting thing. I bunt every once in a while can be fun. I think a well-timed, well-placed bunt can be loads of fun. 2 of my favorite plays this year of the whole season to date were those surprise drag bunts from Christian Yelich to get an insurance run late. That bunt against the Twins, like when it's placed out of nowhere, it's fun. It's surprising. It's something that you don't see very often. It's a good time. But when the entire infield is in and they all know it's coming, Jesus, just swing the bat. Just play baseball. I don't think I'm asking for too much. It was really frustrating to watch last night. I'm not even that mad that they lost. I'm more mad that I had to sit and endure what both of those teams were trying to do in the 10th inning. It's like they completely forgot the sport they were playing. They got caught up in this little mini game around the pitcher's mound. Just swing the bat. 608-321-1670. We can continue to talk about this. It's one thing that I had to get off my chest to begin the show. I want to get into football before too long, but if you have thoughts on this, I'll take them. 608-321-1670. We'll get into your calls and your comments. The Wisco Sports Show continues next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
He's just playing with so much freedom, and you could tell how much fun he's having playing the game. And it's not like he didn't have fun early on in the season. He had the success on opening day against the Mets, and then for the next 2 months, it was really, pardon the pun, hit and miss, right? So he's chasing a lot. I think he was playing very timidly in the outfield, not diving for balls, on trying to get some better reads. And that third deck is really a big deal in Major League Baseball. It's different than it being in the minor leagues. But he's playing with so much more freedom. And I go back to a conversation that he had with Freddie Peralta and Willie Adames after a game in Miami, where they pulled him into the tunnel mid-game and said, dude, you are here for a reason. Play like you belong here. Play like you play. Just be you. And since that time, really since June 2nd, he's been one of the best players in Major League Baseball. He had a 207 batting average on June 1st at that ball game. And since then, he has played with such freedom, such emotion, and he really has carried this team. He, Willie Adames, and William Contreras have carried this team offensively, and it's no coincidence that those three guys, before every single game, are out on the field doing early work together. That's not a coincidence.
That's Jeff Levering earlier today on the Bill Michaels Show, talking about the progression of Jackson Chourio, and that's a really succinct, really, really concise minute and 10 seconds, right, of the progress that he's made from early on in the season and the factors that have played into that success. That's really good stuff from Jeff Levering, hour number 1 of the Bill Michaels Show on the podcast, if you want to go back and find it and listen to that interview from earlier today. It's funny that he mentioned Contreras and Adames and some of those other guys. The Brewers lineup came out right when we went to break. And I don't think any lineup is that important. Like, there's never been a lineup that's broken or been released during the show. I'm like, stop the presses. We need to talk about this. It's not earth-shattering stuff. It's just a baseball lineup. However, I do think this is interesting. Second base, Terang hitting leadoff. Chourio's DHing. Not totally shocking or surprising, but okay, that's interesting. 20-year-old gets the night off from playing the field. Jake Bauers at first hitting 3. Like, I mean, that sucks, but not for any reasons that we haven't talked about before. That's nothing new. Adames hitting 4th at short. Garrett Mitchell hitting 6th and right. Blake Perkins hitting 7th in center. Joey Ortiz playing 3rd. Sal Frelick hitting left. Eric Haas is catching. No William Contreras in the lineup tonight. Interesting. And I'm actually interested to see if the Brewers put out an updated version of this tweet, because on this list, Joey Ortiz and Eric Haas are both listed as catcher, which I'm assuming is just a typo. I'm assuming Joey Ortiz is playing 3rd. Now, maybe they misprinted this and they left William Contreras off, or maybe, and this is what I'm assuming, is that it's just a typo with Joey Ortiz, who's supposed to be at 3rd, and William Contreras is getting a night off completely, 100%. William Contreras has gone ice cold. In his last 10 at-bats, no hits. He's chasing, striking out a lot. Now, he did absolutely scald a ball last night, but he hit it on the ground. I think he hit it at like 109, which goes back to the conversation we were having about William Contreras earlier on in the week. Was it this week, or maybe it was late last week? I can't remember. It all starts to run together. When we talked about, right, kind of the hitting profile of William Contreras. And for those watching on the live stream, I think I have the graphic here that I can maybe throw up. Yeah, here it is. His baseball savant profile. This is William Contreras' savant. And I guess it's probably about a week old, but we have such a sample now where this isn't going to misrepresent the player that he's been. He hits the ball hard, always. His exit velocity is not an issue. He's in the top, 6 or 7% in Major League Baseball in hard hit statistics. He just doesn't elevate the ball enough. And in the month of August, he started to elevate it, and he hit a ton of home runs. Right? The problem with William Contreras is sometimes he tops the ball. So he's hitting ground balls that are 109 miles an hour, which is hard as hell. Normally, when you hit a ball at 109 miles an hour, right? That's a ball with an expected batting average that's significant. You expect a lot of those balls to have good outcomes, positive offensive outcomes. When you're hitting them at 3 degrees off the bat, they're ground balls, which is what we were seeing last night. William Contreras just straight up getting the night off. I haven't seen anything about him, an injury, about this, that, and the other thing. The Brewers did put out a new lineup card with Ortiz at third base. Yeah, so that's not a typo. Eric Haas is catching tonight. I also, and maybe this is a conversation that's not worth having today. Maybe we should just wrap up the Brewers talk and get to the Packers. And that's what we're going to do next. So if you're just waiting on that, I'm sorry. You can wait 4 or 5 more minutes. I don't always love how William Contreras calls games. They had Paul Goldschmidt 0-2 with Jared Koenig last night. And William Contreras is calling for fastballs back there. It's like, brother, you don't need to do that. You don't need to start throwing heaters to Paul Goldschmidt. Of all people, when you're up 0-2 in the count, you have so many pitches to waste. Paul Goldschmidt has chased a lot of pitches this year. I don't have his profile in front of me. I guess I could pull it up. I'm interested to see his chase rate or his whiff rate. Goldschmidt, baseball savant. Let me just pull this up. Paul Goldschmidt has struck out a lot this year, obviously. The Brewers, once upon a time, not that long ago, intentionally walked someone. Devin Williams did, to load the bases to face Paul Goldschmidt. Yeah, here it is. I have his savant profile. His strikeout percentage is at 26%. Puts him in the 18th percentile of Major League Baseball. He's whiffing a ton. I say that to say this. William, stop calling fastballs right down the pipe when you have good fastball hitters at the plate behind in the count. Did it with Carlos Santana in Minnesota earlier this year. In extras. He had no reason to throw him a fastball there, and he jacked it into right field. Now, the Brewers ended up winning that game anyways, and the Brewers might have ended up losing it. The issue is not the pitching. The issue is not the pitch calling from William Contreras last night. The issue was the offense. They couldn't hit the ball. They had one hit over the final 6 or 7 innings, and it was the ball that shouldn't even been a hit because Ciani couldn't hold on to that line drive from Adames in center in extra innings. But I'm interested to see how Colin Ray performs with Eric Haas tonight because, to be quite honest, I kind of like how Eric Haas calls games. He's not so fastball heavy. He's not such a bull in a china shop with his pitch mix. William Contreras, I don't always love how he calls a game. And Pat Murphy, if a pitcher performs well, will be the first person in a postgame presser to tell you, oh, yeah, William called a great game. We got to give him credit. And a lot of times I'm like, I don't know that he did. J.A. Krebs says, screw the ghost runner if it's tied after 12, home run derby. I don't disagree. I would actually be okay with that. And if some of you are like, how could you? So disrespectful to baseball. Man, it's the 12th inning. Baseball is already being disrespected. If Bryce Wilson is being extended or if Elvis Peguero is pitching with runners on, the game's already being disrespected. We can at least have fun while we disrespect it and hold a home run derby at second base. Matt in Chippewa Falls says Jackson Churio should be in the rookie conversation. Yeah, rookie of the year. I think he's probably going to get third. He was third in the odds. Paul Skeens was far and away last time I checked, I believe, and maybe I could look, but you could look it up too. It was Skeens, Merrill, and Churio in third, and they were in a class of their own. After that, there was a significant drop-off. So he's in the conversation. He is. He's been in the conversation for a while. He's probably not going to finish in the top 2, although he could. I mean, if he plays this way through the end of the year, maybe he surpasses Skeens or whoever ends up being number 2. Again, I don't have the odds in front of me. Maybe. He's in the conversation. 100%. Totally. He's there. I don't know if he's going to improve in the conversation, but he's in the conversation. Howdy, Mike. And then we'll wrap up this segment. We can come back with the Packers. Says, Grant, the same argument can be said for many years. How many times have we endured strikeouts, pop-ups, and groundouts when runners are in scoring position? It comes down to execution. The players failed to execute the strategy successfully. I think fatigue might have contributed to some of the offensive issues. Yeah, maybe. I mean, they played how many games in how many days? They had a doubleheader last week. One of those games went into extras. Game went into extras on Sunday. Game went into extras yesterday. Night game after a day game. I don't know that matters a whole lot, but I just mentioned it. Maybe that helps make my case. I don't know. Yeah, fatigue totally might have a part of it. 100%. And it'll be nice because they have a little bit of a homestand now. Last week, they had the Giants at home, and then they traveled, and then they're back. They have an extended stay at home, so hopefully gives them a chance to recharge their batteries. And Coyote Mike, I think on some level, at least, Pat Murphy must agree with you because Contreras has the night off tonight. Completely. Not from catching, but completely. And he needs a night off in both cases. Because offensively right now, he's turned into a brick after a white-hot month of August. 608-321-1670. Let's take a break. Come back. I have a Packers topic for you. I put my producer shoes on this morning. I have a Packers topic for us to sink our teeth into next. We'll do that. It's the Wisco Sports Show.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Give me your favorite week 1 matchup on the board.
Packers Eagles. The Packers. I have a feeling they could be a little full of themselves. I think they've been smelling their own farts this offseason. Everyone's telling them how great they are. They're going to the Super Bowl. And the Eagles, I don't know. That could be a train. They could be great. They could be a train wreck. Belichick could be hovering over that team all year. I think this is a big indicator in the NFC.
That's Greg Bedard, the Boston Sports Journal, covers the Patriots. That was on his weekly hit on 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston. A listener who listens to this show, and Felger and Maz, the radio show that I clipped that from, DM'd me yesterday. Tyler, who I believe listens to us somewhere in Massachusetts, I see him on the stream commenting. I might have seen him earlier today commenting on the stream. Said, hey, Greg Bedard said today that the Packers are smelling their own farts. I'm like, well, I guess I'll have to listen to that. And I probably was going to listen anyways because I like Felger and Maz. It's one of the many sports radio shows. And ever since Parkins left Chicago, I've been needing to get my local radio fix elsewhere. So I've been listening to more Felger and Maz. I thought it was a very nice breakdown of what I believe to be the most interesting game in week 1. And we've talked about this. I played you a cut of Jeff Darlington, ESPN, talking about the same thing, right? What a wide range of outcomes, right? What a, not an indicative game. What's the word that I'm looking for? A game that will really tell us about the future of especially the Eagles, but also to a degree the Packers, because I think there's a lot of people around football where it's like, yeah, they had a great final 8 games last year. Jordan Love was excellent for the final half of last season. Is that where we're going to pick things up week 1? And I think we all hope, we all have our fingers crossed. I think the Packers hope on some level that that's where we're going to pick up the season. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have given him all that money. But I think this game is the most interesting game of week 1. I think the implications of this game are the heaviest. What we're going to learn from this game, I think, is the most important lesson to be learned in week 1. And I think Bedard might be onto something when he says the Packers are smelling their own farts a little bit. Has the noise this offseason gotten into that locker room? They've had to hear for months how great they are, how well that roster was built, how perfectly they are positioned, and how talented they are, and how well positioned they are for the next couple of years to try to win a Super Bowl, how great they are. That stuff typically gets into a locker room. The players hear it. And how often do we hear head coaches say at the podium, hey, the second you start feeling yourself, the second you take your foot off the gas, that's how you get beat in this league. So I am not saying that the Packers, in the words of Greg Bedard, are smelling their own farts, but I think it's worth discussing because, and we're going to get to the phones here in a sec. So if you're holding on, please, I'll get to you. Just give me 60 more seconds. 608-321-1670. How many times have we watched the Packers play in a spot like this where we're all excited for a big matchup in prime time or in a cool locale or against another contending team, and the Packers don't look up to the task and they get pushed around a little bit, and the quarterback goes to the podium afterwards, and Aaron Rodgers did this a couple of times and said, I think we were starting to feel ourselves a little bit. I think we were starting to read our own press clippings. I believe Rodgers said that from time to time. We needed this. I think that special are the teams that don't need to be reminded. Special are the teams that can keep their focus and keep their nose to the grindstone while everyone is telling them how great they are. Special are the teams that don't need to be knocked down a peg every once in a while. I'm interested to watch this game from that perspective as well. How motivated and how hungry and how ready to go will the Packers be, despite them spending the last 3 or 4 months just bathing in it from local Wisconsin media, local Wisconsin sports fans, and national sports talkers too, saying, man, is there a better team? Is there a team better positioned right now than the Packers? Look at all this talent. Look what they accomplished in year 1. Look at how deep this wide receiver. They're all feeling themselves. I'm not saying the Packers have been reading their own press clippings. I'm saying that if they get knocked around on Friday night and Jordan Love goes to the podium and said, yeah, I think maybe we were feeling ourselves a little bit too much. I'm just saying that's totally on the board. Because I've seen it happen half a dozen times the last 10 years. It's not happened all the time with the Aaron Rodgers Packers. All the time. So don't tell me that that's not possible. If you want to tell me that, no, I don't think that'll happen, and here's why. Fine. But don't say that I'm being a hater, that I'm being negative for bringing this up. Because I think this outcome is absolutely on the board. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, it's Darnell.
What's going on, Darnell?
Hey, look, I try to be as objective as possible, even though I'm a Packers super fan, right?
Of course.
So I'm always trying to look at the Packers and not look at them through the rose-colored glasses. It's been really hard this offseason to not get excited though about the team that they put together, right? Like, I think that the fact that they've been able to draft so well the last 2-3 drafts, and then those draft picks actually producing in like the first or second year that they are on the field, that's been very nice to see. And if that trend continues, I think that the preseason hype is definitely warranted and will be paid off. But I also am a Packer fan, and I've lived through just absolute heart-wrenching losses, and some of those have happened in the regular season. I think back to the start of the season. It was probably, I want to say 3 years ago, 2021, they started the season against the Saints and just laid an egg.
In Jacksonville.
And that made me so mad, but also I half expected it, so it wasn't that bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So is that kind of a situation that we're in where it's like, if it happens, it's week 1. Jordan Love didn't get enough playing time in the preseason. Right. That's the they came out flat because there was still some rust there. Right. If it happens, it happens. They have to fly 11 hours to play in a third world country.
So do the Eagles, though. I don't care. I don't care.
Oh my gosh. Yep. That's true. I didn't think about it like that. I didn't.
I thought you were messing with me.
I didn't think that both teams have to do that, don't they?
Are you messing with me? Are you messing with me?
No, I didn't think about. I legitimately, in my rose-colored Packer glasses, I forgot that there's another team that has to fly 11 hours to play.
A team. By the way, the Eagles don't like each other. Darnell, that's a good call. I appreciate it. It was the Saints game, and that's a game that I went back and I read the post-game comments from Aaron Rodgers, where he's like, "Yep, that was that was an ass kicking. We got knocked down a peg." Right? We heard that a lot from the Packers and Rodgers. And I'm not blaming Rodgers. It's just that team knew they were good. They knew they were contenders because they had Adams and Rodgers and Bakhtiari, and like that's a good team. And they knew it. So every couple of weeks they'd get knocked around, and then they'd come to the podium and say, "Yeah, we were slacking off a little bit in practice. This is good. We needed this." It's like, yeah, okay, but special teams, championship teams shouldn't need that wake-up call. They should wake themselves up. They should be self-motivating, right? Now, Darnell, on your thought about the Packers traveling 11 hours in the flight, put a pin in that. I want to circle back to that at the end of this hour because I have some Matt LaFleur audio for you, and we're going to talk about that. But just put a pin in it for now. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, this is Keith from Cross Plains.
Hey, Keith. Oh, a second Cross Plains caller. Wow, now we have you and Matt.
World domination.
Do you and Matt know each other by chance?
I do not know Matt.
Wow.
Maybe Matt and I should be meeting somewhere in downtown Cross Plains for drinks. But
just go stand at the four-way. Yeah.
Exactly right. Listen, Grant, I don't know if this negativity is just hangover from your Badger negativity or what's going on, but look, I don't have a strong opinion about Greg Bedard in the first place. I don't like the guy. So to me, this is drumming up controversy where there isn't any, right? Like, okay. We're going to try to draw a conclusion about the rest of the season based on a game in Brazil from two teams who we don't even know what they are at this point. No. I'm not buying it.
Well, I think the bigger conclusions, here's where I would agree with you. If the Packers get knocked around and they go to the podium and they say, we needed this, I don't know that dooms the rest of their season. The Eagles, maybe. Like I think the Eagles, that's the result that you could take something away from long term. Right, Keith? Like if the Eagles get knocked around and the body language is bad, then we could just say, well, nothing got better from last year. Right? So that the Eagles, I think, are the team that we're really watching out for bigger picture things. I think the Packers' result is much more confined to Friday night, if that makes sense.
Maybe, but here's the thing. I don't think anybody wants to go to Brazil, and this is my thing. Like, nobody wants to make this trip. This is such an anomaly. Like, we're completely out of the whole – I mean, all of these teams love routine. There is nothing routine about this trip at all. You're modifying your practice schedule. You're modifying your training. You're modifying your food. everything is different. There's nothing normal about this. So to me, it's like, I don't put any stock in this. No matter what happens in week 1 for these two teams, zero stock in this for me. I think this could go anywhere from here for either of them. My opinion on it.
So I think you make some good points. I disagree with you. I think there is a result and there is a way that this game could be played where I would look at the Eagles and say, I'm out. Because of what happened last year, because of the reporting of this offseason. Now, that's an Eagles thing. Now, if the Packers lose, I'm not going to come in on Monday and be like, guys, all the excitement about the Packers and all the excitement about the wide receiver, all these, forget it. It's not, we're cooked. Like, I think the Packers could get lit up on Friday night, and it still really, really wouldn't destroy my thoughts about the season. Now, it would suck. But if the Eagles look really bad, if the Eagles, their body language is crummy, considering everything that happened last year and considering what was reported between Sirianni and Hurts and the coordinators and all that, I think there is a result that could happen. I know it's in Brazil. I know it's in a weird spot. And by the way, maybe this is a Dave from Monona take, but why shouldn't they? Brazil is cool. Getting to go play in that huge stadium in front of passionate fans for the first time, that's cool. Like, oh, no one wants to go down there. It's such a drag. Okay, it's a long flight. Sorry. Sorry you have to sit on a plane for a while. Is that the worst part of this trip? I resent that whole line of thinking. Anytime a team has to travel out of the country, it's like we turn into martyrs. Oh, shipped all over the world to dance like a monkey to make money for Roger Goodell. It's like, I don't know. They're getting paid a ton of money. It's a cool experience. Is it really the end of the world? And it's week 1, so it's not like they're disadvantaged coming from the previous week, and they're going to be back, I think, Saturday night. So they sleep in their bed Saturday night, and they're home, and they have off all day Sunday. I'm not feeling bad for these guys who get to / have to travel to a different country. What a cool experience. Preston Smith, I went back and I pulled a ton of audio from when the Packers went to London a couple of years ago, and you're going to hear some of that in a little bit. And Preston Smith was talking about, this is my second or third time going because he was with Washington and they had been over there. He's like, that was my first opportunity to leave the country. Very cool. I'm not feeling bad for these guys because they have to sit on an airplane for an extended period of time. Sure, maybe there's some extra details that have to be taken into account, but let's not turn these guys into martyrs because they got to travel to a different time zone. 608-321-1670. Got time for one more call, then we got to fit our last break in. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, I got a few takes on this.
You're
barking up the right tree. These players are so spoiled, and the attitude, I've said this a million times, it starts with Matt LaFleur. This guy is, I can't even use the appropriate words on the radio to describe how he approaches travel, but, Matt, grow a pair, A. B, Aaron Rodgers, when he was on this team, I hate to use the AR word, but he was one of the only ones talking to the media about what a great opportunity this was to get out of the country, do a little sightseeing. And then 3C, anybody who's tracking this plane is an absolute loser and needs to get a job.
I would agree with. We talked about all these things on Bill's show earlier today, and I'm with you. Aaron Rodgers was the one guy who was like, this is going to be cool. I've never been there before. Matt LaFleur was all bent about sleeping pods. Rasul Douglas was bitching about how it sucked last time he had to leave the country. Rodgers, I agree with you. Rodgers was the only one who handled it with any form of enthusiasm last time around, Cone. I agree with you. And by the way, you mentioned LaFleur. I really have liked his comments about going to Brazil this week. You can tell that there's extra work and it's complicated, and I think he's stressed about it as any coach or boss would be. But I'm gonna compare and contrast cuts from 2022 and from this year, and I don't want to say night and day difference, but I think LaFleur learned a lot the first time, and I think he's in a good spot to have this go a lot better the second time around. I'm optimistic.
Well, he must be listening to the show, so that's good. I don't think this game has any really big whatever the word is, implications on the Super Bowl season. What I do think matters is the absence of a cagey veteran. Who is the Julius Peppers of this team? Who is the Von Miller of this team? One of those vets they bring in for strictly leadership. And I just think that piece is missing that you often see in Super Bowl teams, like the Charles Woodson of 2011. Who is that guy on this team?
Well, Well, it could be Preston Smith, but all the other names that you mentioned are Hall of Famers or Hall of Fame level players. You know what I mean? So, like, does the player have to just be a KG veteran, or do they have to be one of the best players ever at their position? Because that's what Woodson and Peppers and Von Miller, those are some of the best to ever do it. So I would say Preston Smith is the KG veteran, but he's not a Hall of Famer. He's just a very good, I think, good leader and a good player, but he's not Julius Peppers or Charles Woodson.
Yeah, obviously not. But like, it has to be a newer addition. Like someone they could even bring in like mid-season.
Someone they could rally around. Hey, we got to do it for this guy. It's maybe his last chance. Is that kind of, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. Something that you see when the news drops from Adam Schefter that's like, okay, this is a Super Bowl winning move. And I just don't think we have that quite yet, which, I think lowers my expectations for the season.
I love that way of thinking, Cone. That was an excellent call. And while I was bitching about players not wanting to go to other countries, I'm like, I think Cone would agree with this. I hope he calls in at some point tonight. Let's take a break, 3 minutes. When we come back, I told Darnell to put a pin in it. I told Cone that I have some audio. I have some audio. I made a montage. Couple comments from LaFleur, a comment from Rodgers from the first time they traveled abroad when they went to London in 2022. And then you're going to hear a couple comments from this year. And I think you'll notice a difference, which has me feeling better. I still stress anytime a team is taken out of their environment and has to travel, there's a lot of variables that could impact performance. I'm not 100% confident and sure that this is going to go perfectly, but I feel a lot better about it relative to 2022. And I'll show you why. You'll hear that coming up next. It's the Wisco Sports Show.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I mean, certainly there's always more you can do, right? I know just some of the challenges that kind of present themselves in terms of facing the Giants. Just cramming all this stuff in over the last 2 days, it does provide a few obstacles in terms of just getting everything rep.
Listen, coaches are creatures of habit even more than players. Anytime there's a minute adjustment to the schedule, it throws them all out of whack.
Well, the goal is to sleep. We just don't, unfortunately, they didn't give us a plane with a ton of pods, so we'll see how that goes.
Rodgers in trouble. Looking. Ball knocked out. Recovered underneath with no time left by Green Bay. And the Giants come from behind and knock off the Packers 27-22. New York is now 4-1 with a stunner in London.
I thought the fans were unbelievable. It was a really cool atmosphere. You know, I just wish we would have performed better for our fans that showed out today for us. Definitely, you could feel their energy. You could hear them. I thought they played a part. It's just, unfortunately, we didn't do enough on our part. I feel really confident with our plan and what we're going to do. And, you know, the circumstances are the circumstances, but it's the same for both teams. We're focused on Philadelphia. The circumstances are such, and if you draw your attention elsewhere, then I think you're doing yourself a disservice.
Tell it to him, Matt. Sounds a lot better, right? This time around? Look, we're confident in our plan. We're focused on Philadelphia. Yeah, we got to take a flight, but so do they. Philly's a good team. If we don't focus on them, we're doing ourselves a disservice. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear Darius Slay on his stupid podcast talk about, I don't want to go. There's crime there. They speak a different language there. Have you ever, people are waking up this week. It's like international travel never existed until today. Until today. This is like the first time. Wait, there's planes that go. There's other countries outside of the border. So it's outside of the border of the U.S. It's across an ocean. Well, certainly there's no big cities there. What? It's like, yeah, there's big cities there. God, 608-321-1670. Time for a quick call, and then we got to take a break at 5 o'clock. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, it's Q.
Hey, Q, what's up?
I have to say, I've been agreeing with Cone Roller more and more. I think this, and you on this thing, I think both teams are having to play in Brazil. It's not a big deal. To answer Cone's question of who is this year's Charles Woodson, it's Xavier McKinney. It's pretty obvious. Like, that guy's going to come in and change his defense more than Jeff Hafley ever could, because he's going to be the best player on that defensive side of the ball this year, in my opinion. And I have a question for you. Do you know what Brazil's largest export is?
Soybeans?
Yeah, you must have looked it up.
I did not. I know things. Damn it. I know things. I know agriculture. It's soybeans. I don't remember why. River monsters, maybe? He spends a lot of time down there.
It's because their largest exporting partner is China. So I think all the soybeans are heading there.
I think that's probably, I don't know how or where I heard that one spot in time, but it probably had something to do with China. Yeah.
My final take before the season starts is I think that Josh Jacobs is going to win the NFL rushing title this year, especially because we've got no backup.
Well,
I think he can be a 4-down back, and I think LaFleur's going to want to run the ball. And I think that's what's coming our way this year. We're not even going to remember who Aaron Jones was after this.
Well, I mean, that would be nice, although I am an Aaron Jones fan. Matt LaFleur did an interview with Matt Schneidman where he talked about Josh Jacobs' usage. I was listening to that last night on his podcast. And I think if Matt LaFleur had his druthers, he'd be able to split carries. But it seemed pretty obvious, and he seemed to all but say that, yeah, we're not going to be able to split carries like we have in the past. Josh Jacobs is going to have to be a bell cow. We'll talk more about this. 2-minute break. Hour 2 next.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, year 2 of the Jordan Love era in Green Bay will get underway on Friday night down in Brazil against the Eagles after a strong finish to his first year as a starter, including a run to the divisional round of the playoffs. Love is eager to get going and build off of what they did in 2023.
Yeah, it does. I think a lot more confidence from the whole team. Offensively, I feel like we're at a really good point. We had a good training camp, and now I think we're ready to start the season. So I'm very excited about it, but I think definitely just have more confidence under your belt, having more reps, and just trusting yourself a lot more.
Love and the Packers headed to Brazil today. It's the first time the NFL will play a game in South America. Love trying to keep their focus on the field.
It's just a lot of unknowns that it's one of those things, like I like to say, it's out of our control. So, just trying to focus on everything I can do to get myself prepared for the game, for the defense we're going to see in the game plan. And then obviously once we get out there, hopefully we go by the stadium, kind of get a feel for the layout, field, everything, and then just play it by ear. But a lot of stuff that's out of our control.
Injury-wise, everyone would have practiced today, at least on a limited basis, had the team actually been on the field for practice. The Eagles going to be without linebacker Devin White. He has already been ruled out. Kick on Friday is at 7:15. Badgers, meanwhile, going to host South Dakota on Saturday. Kick there is at 2:30.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Farmers deal with a lot, including long days, stress, and fatigue. This is your reminder to take breaks, stretch, have a snack, and hydrate your body. Avoid farm accidents by keeping yourself healthy. Visit ruralmutual.com to learn how Rural Mutual supports Wisconsin farmers and prioritize safety on the farm.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Brewers and Cardinals closing out their series tonight at American Family Field. They've split the first 2 meetings. The crew will get tomorrow off before opening up a series against Colorado on Friday. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil.
Credit the St. Louis pitching if you want. They did a really nice job. But, I think it wasn't our normal output. It wasn't our normal output in my mind. Yeah.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
The one comment there from Q that I didn't really address, and to be fair to me as a host, I ran out of time. That's not in my control. I ran out of time. He mentioned that the KG veteran, the Cone Roller was talking about, that's Xavier McKinney. I mean, Xavier McKinney, I think, is the offseason addition. He's new, but he's 25, right? He's not the age of Julius Peppers, Von Miller, or why am I drawing a blank? I keep wanting to say Clay Matthews, Charles Woodson. The thing, KG veteran and Hall of Famer in the twilight of their career are those are two different things. I think Preston Smith is, for all intents and purposes, I think he's their veteran voice as a leader. I wouldn't mind if they brought in a rotational pass rusher or a linebacker. I don't know that they're going to get, again, a Hall of Famer in the twilight of their career. Those are pretty tough to come by. I like their talent. Maybe they could use another veteran or two, and maybe they look to make that addition this year. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. It's a good call from Q, good call from Cohen as well. It's the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. Jesse Temple, about 30 minutes away. I talked to him this afternoon. This is a good one. I think this is our best conversation yet, talking about what happened against Western Michigan and what's up next coming against South Dakota. And I tell you what, Jesse prides himself on being a writer. And I think, Zach will come on air and he'll mix it up and he'll push buttons. Jesse is very formal. He is a journalist. He is a writer. That's his role that he's played on Temple and Heilbronn. That's the role that he plays in our network. And I love that. That's not a criticism at all. It's just that he is much more, I don't even want to say bound to facts, because it's not like I'm on the air lying. But, I'll try to, what's a good conversation? What's a good topic? How can we frame things to have interesting and entertaining conversations? And Jesse's here to talk about what happened and how it happened and why. He made an analogy that, Jesse, if you want to get into sports radio, which I guarantee if I presented this to him this way, he'd be like, no, thanks, I have no interest, which is fine, which is fine. He had an analogy to describe this upcoming matchup with South Dakota that was excellent, really, really good. So there's the one little tidbit that I'll give you to tease you, to keep you on the line until 5:30 when Jesse gets here. To reset the show a little bit, professional reset. This is what I played back at 4:30, and this is what we've been reacting to because I think there is a possibility. I think it's on the board that the Packers have been reading the press clippings this offseason, that they've been feeling the hype, that they're a little high on the hog, and that Friday night against the Eagles could provide a little swift kick in the pants. And we saw that with Rodgers all the time. And again, it's not Rodgers' fault. I'm saying in the last couple of years with Aaron Rodgers, it seemed like once or twice a year they'd have a loss where then they'd come to the podium afterwards. Matt LaFleur would, Aaron Rodgers would, and others. Well, we started to, slack off at practice. Don't know that we had the best week of practice. I think we were starting to feel ourselves a little bit. This is a good reset. That happened a lot. I think that outcome is on the board. Not saying I would bet on it. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm saying it's on the board. So it's worth talking about. This is Greg Bedard, 98.5 The Sports Hub with Felger and Maz. I clipped this. He was on Bill's show earlier today, kind of talking about this point. And I have an extended comment from Bedard about this that I can play for you, but this is the tidbit that I tweeted out earlier today, and this is what got the ball rolling on this topic.
Give me your favorite week 1 matchup on the board.
Packers Eagles. The Packers, I have a feeling they could be a little full of themselves. I think they've been smelling their own farts this offseason. Everyone's telling them how great they are. They're going to the Super Bowl. And the Eagles, I don't know. That could be a train. They could be great. They could be a train wreck. Belichick could be hovering over that team all year. I think this is a big indicator in the NFC.
So I agree with him on the Eagles too. And if you have a thought on that, fine. Or we can put that piece of the game to the side. I think, as Jeff Darlington said on ESPN the other day, and I played that cut for you last night, he said, that's the most interesting game of week 1. I think everyone wants to see the Eagles. What does it look like with Vic Fangio? What does it look like with Kellen Moore? Because it looked horrible last year. The body language sucked. The vibes sucked. The funk that team went into. Jalen Hurts doesn't seem to like Sirianni, and that feeling seems to go both ways. Jalen Hurts wants to run it more his way. I don't know that he's skilled enough to run it his way. I don't know that he's complete enough of a pocket passer and a field general to run it his way. Nick Sirianni, I think, is a little bit over his head and has cycled through coordinators now. Ever since Shane Steichen left, that offense hasn't quite looked the same fully from the Super Bowl year. And now Vic Fangio's here. I don't know how this is going to work. They should have all the talent to be a contender, but I think we're all kind of waiting to see how it looks. So that's the second part. The part of this answer that I actually want to talk about was Bedard saying that basically the Packers have been smelling their own farts.
The Packers, I have a feeling they could be a little full of themselves. I think they've been smelling their own farts this offseason. Everyone's telling them how great they are. They're going to the Super Bowl.
That's real. I think teams read the press clippings, and I think the noise gets to an NFL locker room. And the NFL is not the NBA. It's not Major League Baseball in that if you show up not 100% ready to go and locked in every Sunday, you lose. It's not the NBA where you can slap dick around. It's just the Pistons. We're going to, fart our way through the first and second quarter, and it's not how it works. In the NFL, if you don't show up 100% fully locked and loaded, ready to go against every opponent, you lose. Especially a team like the Eagles, right? The Eagles are good. That's a really talented team with lots of great players on both sides of the ball. And look, the Packers might play really well and lose the game anyways, because maybe the Eagles play really well. That's on the board too. I'm saying I am mindful, I am weary of this idea that Bedard brought up. Bedard used to cover the Packers, by the way, for the Journal-Sentinel. Now he's in Boston. He covers the Patriots. So he's more qualified than most, not as some, because he doesn't currently cover the team. He's just saying anytime a team has to hear that an entire offseason, how great they are and how well positioned they are and how talented they are, it's easy to say, we got this. We're awesome. Just ask anybody. I don't need to work quite as hard. I don't need to be quite as locked in. Again, I'm not predicting it. I'm saying it's on the board, and that's why I want to talk about it. 608-321-1670. Let's take a call. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant.
Vagabond.
Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.
Always a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine, Vagabond John.
Yeah. See, Grant, that's what makes you an elite host. That's what makes you an elite
By the way,
host.
I'm not done talking Badger football. I'm not done talking Badger football with you. I'm assuming you want to talk Packers here, but it's at some point, maybe tomorrow or certainly early next week. I do. You were very fast yesterday. I feel like you have more to say. I think I have more to say about the Badgers. And I know that I'm taking up your time now, although there's nobody else on hold, so we can go back and forth for a bit. But I know we don't talk more.
We got plenty of space, and I feel like I get plenty of airtime on these waves.
That's
I'm sure
fair.
some of the listeners roll their eyes aggressively. But
yourself
when we're thinking about this guy's comments, here's the thing. I think the nature of playing in Brazil almost protects against that, getting people outside of their comfort zone. when I'm I'm a manager in my day job. When I'm feeling like my reps are getting a little complacent, I do like to shake things up, get them outside of their comfort zone, present them with something not normal, get them outside of the normal building. I did it to myself in my hobby. I'm a professional pinball player. I go to a new venue, a new place. The lighting's a little bit different. And all of a sudden I play my best and I win a major tournament, right? So I think getting out to Brazil, getting away from the building, if this game was at Lambeau Field, I actually think the complacency thing would be a little bit more real. You're not, you're in the same spot you've been in the last couple of months. Everybody's singing your praises. Getting on a plane, getting into some sort of weird Matt LaFleur sleeping pod, doing all this weird stuff kind of gets you out of your comfort zone. What do you think about that?
So I think it's a great take. It's not something that I considered. It's not something that anybody has brought up. The very act of going to South America and playing in an uncomfortable environment after a long flight almost demands it, forces of you to be on your best behavior, not literally, although I think they should also be on their best behavior in a foreign country. It's a good rule of thumb when you travel internationally, when you're abroad. I've seen the show Locked Up Abroad. I understand what can happen. I mean, look at Brittany Griner. I mean, it doesn't have to be on a television station. So I want them to be on their best behavior, but to be locked in and to be focused, you almost have to be. It's like Vagabond John, for example. If you have a flight at 6 a.m., you got to have your ducks in a row because you're getting up at 3. It's dark. You can't be doing last minute packing at 3 o'clock in the morning. You can't be finding your identification, your things in the car. You need to, the day before, it's even more important to be packed and to be buttoned up. It's a fine analogy. That's what came to mind.
I am much more likely to miss a 6 p.m. flight than I am a 6 a.m. flight.
Right.
I like that take. I like that analogy. I wonder if who's the traveler? Listen, Tony travels a lot. LaCroix travels a lot. I bet you they can relate.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have everything kind of locked and loaded the day before. That's a good take.
First of all, again, if you miss a flight, if you miss a flight, grow up. Like if there's traffic, if you have a car, no, not even traffic. Let me take that back. If your car blows up, if there's a personal circumstance, if you just straight up like mistime your trip to the airport, grow up. Like I am sorry. You say I'm more likely to miss my flight. Who misses a flight? Are you 7? Sorry, but that's how I feel.
There was a time in my life where I was flying multiple times every week, and that was like just the redundant. Good luck remembering which hotel room you're in when you're in a different hotel every night. So I know there's probably some traveling sales people out there that are like, Grant, you don't know what it's like on the road. You haven't been in these shoes.
Right.
But to transition a little bit to the Badgers, I think that also relates because I think that's kind of what we watched a little bit at Camp Randall is they're in the same environment. Yeah, they go to Platteville for their camp, but then they're back for the last 2 weeks, right? They're practicing. They're in the same space. They're really comfortable. I think opening up the season on the road, challenging themselves right away, getting themselves in that mindset so that they're not going to get complacent. They're not feeling that sense of homeness. You want these guys to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I think, whether it's the Packers in Brazil, we'll see how it plays out. But I think for both teams, it'll be interesting to see how they carry the next 3 weeks. I agree with the callers who have said this is not a prescriptive game per se, because it isn't so early, although both teams are very healthy, which is awesome. I'm very curious to see how it impacts the next couple of weeks. But the Badgers, they were at home. They, a little bit of it's a Friday night game. I guess that's the most interesting part of it. But I felt like they kind of walked through that. And I think we'll hear Jesse talk about how that's not the plan for South Dakota State.
Is it nuts, Vagabond John, that I think that not South Dakota State, this South Dakota game by the way, didn't South Dakota State win the SCS title? I think South Dakota lost in the quarterfinals. They lost to NDSU last year. They went 10-3. I was looking up. I was doing, this is why Jesse coming on the show is great, is it forces me to be buttoned up. Jesse is my Sao Paulo. He forces me to get my ass in gear and actually know my stuff. I think this game on Saturday is actually going to be closer. I think it's going to be more stressful. Unless the Badgers were really sandbagging last Friday, unless that game totally and completely doesn't represent who they are as a team, I think South Dakota is going to give them more problems, bigger problems than Western Michigan did.
I would agree if week 1 went a little bit more smoothly, right? I think we got lucky. There were some big plays made by Paul Chris players, which you've elaborated on. Look, Vegas expects this game to be close.
Yeah.
This line's like 12.
Yeah, it's half. The spread is half the size of what the Western Michigan spread was. Yep.
That should be insulting to every Badger fan who's been watching non-conference games at Camp Randall for the last, 2 decades plus, right? So I think this program has a chip on their shoulder. unless Badgers beat has been totally blowing smoke. And again, I make exceptions for our boys, Zach and Jesse.
I think they've both been good.
Very real.
Agreed.
I think they've both been very measured. But, you've seen me on Twitter. You've seen these other people. Everybody's got a podcast now. Everybody's pretending that, all of these freshmen are going to make this huge impact. It's college football. These guys need some time. And they've been acting like, Will Pauling's the second coming of CeeDee Lamb in college football. And it's just not the case, right? I think we're all in this environment. We're all on that reality. But, I just don't know that this team is all that talented at the high end. That being said, the big boys in the trenches need to put the Dakotas in their place. Somebody's got to say Dakota stop mattering, right? Whether it's North, whether it's South, whether it's a state school or not.
Yeah.
Like, these schools are in the middle of nowhere. You got Mount Rushmore. That's it. You're irrelevant. Time to put them in their place. Go back. Never be relevant again. I can't name you a single person from a Dakota. And Idaho, I'm sorry. I'm going to lump you in there as well. I don't know what happened.
If
Oregon,
if we're ranking FCS schools, my favorite is the Montana Grizzly, Missoula, not Bozeman. And then I really like Idaho. The Vandals, Idaho, not Idaho, but they're from Moscow. I think I subliminally combined the two. FCS football might kind of rip. I might get a little bit more into FCS football this year. These schools are kind of awesome.
Give me Thomas and the WEAC talk over FCS any day.
But yeah, that's
excited
fine.
to listen to what Jesse has to say. I mean, this team,
Jesse was good this week.
This
really
is
good.
going to be a challenge, and the fact that they weren't able to throw the ball deep or put pressure, for explosive plays, that's how you beat these teams that don't have the athletic talent to keep up. If this is a trench battle, watch out, Badger.
That's what I'm saying.
Be a close game, and that's scary.
These Dakota boys are coming to Cambridge. Vagabond John, I got to go. These Dakota boys are coming to town on Saturday looking to kick some ass and push guys around. This is what they live for. So if Luke Fickell's thinking this week, well, we didn't establish the running game last week. This is the week we really lock in the trenches and physically, punish this other team. I think they might be barking up the wrong tree. I don't know that they're going to be able to do this against South Dakota. Maybe I'm really overvaluing the FCS and the top end schools at that level. Maybe I am. I don't know. I just think unless that game, week 1 against Western Michigan, unless that was crazy misrepresentative of how good this team is, how talented they are, how buttoned up they are, this South Dakota team, this game will be a problem. I'm not going to say that South Dakota is going to win, but I think that a lot of Badgers fans that are more casual, and I'm casual to a degree. I'm not on the level of a lot of folks in Madison and the way that they follow college football and the recruiting and all of the things. But I think that there is a portion of Wisconsin fandom. It's like, well, scare week 1, Western Michigan, but that's a MAC opponent. They've had players that I've heard of. They've had coaches that I've heard of. They've been in bowl games in recent memory, playing Wisconsin in one of those games. They cleared that opponent. They cleared the scare. Now this is the week we beat up on South Dakota and we get an easy win. No. I don't think so at all. Vegas doesn't think so either. The spread is not as available for this game as it was for Western Michigan because it's an FCS, FBS crossover. And I guess RJ was explaining to me yesterday that affects kind of the timeliness and the availability of these lines. But I've seen 12 and I've seen numbers smaller than 12. Right? So Vegas thinks that Wisconsin is half as good against South Dakota as they were. They're only half a margin better. They're only half a degree better than they were against Western Michigan. Like this game, I'm almost excited to watch it, honestly. I'm almost excited to see how Wisconsin fares in this. This is why college sports can be fun, is you get these uncommon opponents. You don't know a ton about them. Jesse has an awesome analogy in the interview that you're going to hear coming up, describing the dynamics of this matchup. It's a March Madness analogy, and I'm just excited to play it. I'm excited to sit here and listen to it with you because Jesse was awesome this week. So that's coming up. Couple more thoughts on the Packers. 3 minutes. We'll continue the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I love the Packers roster in a lot of ways. And, but I also know that market, and I know, how sometimes fans and even the players can get a little bit ahead of themselves. And my one worry about the Packers, because I think on paper, absolutely, they are, yes, they're in a tough division. The Lions are going to be very formidable, but I think they have the stuff, as we saw at the end of last year, that they can go on and do, great things, as long as they keep, their nose down, their ears plugged, and just, put in the work. That's what it's going to come down to. So I have a little bit of a worry about that because it's such a young team. But then again, Bill, and this reminds me a lot of, 09 into 2010, where, a very young team, not much experience, not many leaders, but they got hot at the end of 2009, went to the playoffs, set the stage for them winning a Super Bowl next year. So I wouldn't be surprised either way if the Packers win a Super Bowl, or they're not quite ready for prime time.
That's Greg Bedard on the Bill Michaels Show earlier today, talking further about the comments that he made yesterday on his radio show in Boston that I was playing for you. The idea that the Packers might be feeling themselves a little bit after hearing all the compliments and all the commentary this offseason. And in the NFL, that's real. That's a real thing. A team constantly being told how great they are and how much better they are and how well positioned they are and how talented they are. Just listen to any NFL coach on the podium after a game. They'll bring it up. You don't even have to ask them to bring it up. It's like the favorite talking point of most NFL coaches is, if you don't bring your A game every week, if you don't bring your best stuff every week in this league, it doesn't matter who the opponent is. You'll get beat. half of the coaches, half of the league, more than half of the league says that every week for no reason at all. It's always, coaches are always saying that. So don't take my word for it. Coaches talk about it all the time. If you don't bring your A game, if you don't stay 100% focused and locked in on your performance every week, you're going to get beat. It's how this league works. And I agree. The margins in the NFL, there's a lot of coach things, coach isms that are just cliches. They're just hot air. That's true. It's a more balanced league than the NBA or Major League Baseball. One tiny little lack of focus, one bad week of preparation, it gets you beat in the NFL. And I think that's why we like the NFL, is because all these games are close. They're harder to bet on. They all feel meaningful. Now, it's also because there's a lack of games, so there's more urgency. There's more urgency in a 17-game schedule than there is in an 82-game schedule for the NBA or 162-game schedule in baseball. Different sports, I know, but when you only have 17 games, the urgency level is obviously going to be much higher. I think it's on the board. It's on the board. It's a possible outcome that we're talking about next week. If the Packers go down to Brazil and they look like they're not ready for it, and you have Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love and others speaking with the media after the game, and they all say the same thing in different words, which is, yeah, we got a little bit high on ourselves. I think this will be a good lesson. This will be a good kick in the pants. I think we needed this. We were starting to feel ourselves. We were starting to read our own press clippings, right? These are things that we've heard from Packer teams after losses for years, right? And I'm interested to see how this young team hits the ground running this year, because they know that they're good. They know that they have an awesome opportunity here this year and for the foreseeable future in this window. I want to see how locked in and how motivated these younger guys are. I think it's going to be interesting. Coyote Mike texts in, says, good points by Vagabond John. I agree. I enjoyed that call by Vagabond John. Rock and Rick chimes in regarding players complaining about going to foreign countries. Says, soldiers get paid a lot less to fly farther and to get shot at. I agree, Rock and Rick. Look, I understand that it's an inconvenience to fly 9 hours or however, I don't care how far it is, to fly 9, 10, 11 hours. I get it. It's not convenient. You have to switch your schedule around. These teams also have infinite resources, traveling secretaries, managers to set all that stuff up to make it work. This has been on the books forever now. And it's not like they're coming off of a game last week. It's week 1. They're going into Brazil, and then they come home Saturday. They have Saturday night. They have all of Sunday off, and they might even get part of Monday off before then returning to their normal schedule. This isn't the end of the world, and I will be danged if I allow these players to be turned into martyrs because they have to go to Sao Paulo. How many of you would go to Sao Paulo for a couple of days for a work trip if it was paid for? I would. I'd just be like, yeah, that sounds cool. That sounds really cool. What a cool thing to be able to say that I did once upon a time and to let work pay for. Well, great, you don't have kids. Okay, shove it. Okay, you find a way. That's a cool thing to go do. How many people can say, I once played a football game in Sao Paulo? Where's the lust for life? Is it just about short flights and sleeping in your own bed? That's not the life that I want to lead. Fly farther, travel farther, sleep in random places. Very few memorable weekends have occurred in my life. You know when I make the best memories? When I get the worst sleep. And it's not just about sleep. I get to travel to South America, but you get what I'm driving at here. 608-321-1671. Call, then we'll take a break. Get to Jesse Temple. Wisco Sports Show. Who's that?
Father Grant, I have a problem with Ebo and big unit.
Oh, is that right, Rico and Lacrosse? What's that?
I do.
You've spent time and have you lived for extended periods of time in Brazil, or have you just visited multiple times? I can't remember.
I lived both for a year and returned in the U.S. Navy 4 years later.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. And you lived in Sao Paulo. Where did you live again? We've talked about this.
I lived in a city called Belém, which is way up in the north, and it is the opposite end of the planet. Basically, L.A. to New York as Belém is to Sao Paulo.
Yeah, it's a big country. People don't understand. Brazil's a big place, a lot of people, which is why the NFL's going, right? This is the market. This is the audience they're trying to attract, to profitize.
Brazil is larger than the continental United States with the exception of Alaska.
Is it really? I need to look at a map. Global map.
Also, Sao Paulo is the 5th largest city in the world, even bigger than Mexico City. Do you think that the Packers, as a professional organization, and the NFL would allow their people to take their families down there and put them in danger?
No, Rico. And this is why do people have a difficult time understanding this?
That's what I'm saying.
I'm with you. We're agreeing. I agree. We're driving at the same thing here.
And, like I said, basically Sao Paulo is like 2 times the size of New York City. And it is the financial and cultural center of not only Brazil, but of most of Latin America.
You said it's the 5th biggest city in the world?
5th largest city in the world, 22.8 million people.
So it's
just a touch bigger than Mexico City.
It's much bigger than Mexico City.
It's 0.3 bigger than Mexico City.
Okay, so it's behind Tokyo, Shanghai. Do you know the first 5? I need to know the other 5. Tokyo would be 1. I'm assuming 1 or 2 at least are Chinese. They might all be Chinese.
I think Shanghai, Tokyo, Bangladesh, someplace. It's really crazy. And one other. I can't remember what the other one is.
Oh, Delhi. We forgot India. Yeah, Bangladesh. Dhaka. Dhaka. You're right. Good. Hell yeah. I know my South American agriculture. Rico, your global population hubs. Hell yeah, it's a good show. Hell yeah.
And I'm just sick and tired of people calling it a third world nation. Admittedly, there are poor sections where the rich and poor separation is huge, and there's a little bit of political stuff going on. I'll caught myself stuff going on, especially because of Twitter.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is 2 things. One is the country of Brazil is not going to allow itself to be embarrassed by letting something horrible happen to NFL team or their families.
Agreed.
Right? And
yes.
And forgive me, I'm going to cut you off a little. I apologize.
No, you're good.
There is a massive NFL fan base in Brazil, and one of the main teams they follow is the Green Bay Packers.
Why do you think that is? Is it just the colors? You've lived down there. I know that this has been brought up before, but I want to take advantage of your experience down there.
I believe part of it is the colors to begin with, but Brazilians like winners. So, just like Americans, liking Manchester United or something. Come on.
That's funny.
They like champions.
It's funny. I'm a fan of the sports teams that I'm a fan of because my parents liked them, and then there's millions of people in South America. It's like, their colors match us. Why not? We'll cheer for them.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, essentially.
Oh my
God! I mean, trust me, the Brazilian people. There's no way that they would protect anybody going there. They're like, no, you are not going to screw this up for us. We want NFL to come here more.
Yeah, I just
not only the government but the population. They're gonna look out for the Americans. They're gonna embrace them and let them come in, and they're going to accept them like nothing.
I'm with you. I think this is much to do about nothing, Rico. And I got to run.
Yes. Yeah, I understand. Like I said, I'm just still mad at Ebo and the big unit and their perception of Brazil. So
I think
can eat it. They can.
I appreciate you, Rico. I think Evo's stirring the pot, which is what he does. I don't think Bill has been anti-Brazil. I think he's taken commentary and he's talked about it from both ways. Bill is great at just I won't even say fence sitting, but Bill is a hub for takes coming from all over the place for 4 hours a day. I don't think I've disagreed with anything on Bill. I just, I'm gonna leave it there. We're gonna take a break. We're gonna get to Jesse Temple. Talk Badgers. This is a good one, folks. This is good. This is really, really good. Jesse's been joining the show every week now for about a month. He's been joining our network once a week. We finally have a game to talk about, which is the ammo I needed to really make the most of Jesse's time. So I'm really excited to play this interview for you next. Jesse Temple, the Athletic, joins us coming up.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I wanted to start, and I'm going to start the exact same way every show. We're going to be a positive podcast to open every show. That is my promise. That's my guarantee. We will get to all the negative stuff as well. But I want to start, Jesse, week 1. What went right for Wisconsin?
Wisconsin won the game, so that's it would have been an absolute disaster had that not transpired, and we were on the cusp of witnessing that until the muff punt, so I'll start there.
It's a good place to start. That's Zach and Jesse from their podcast, The Camp. And if you're like, Grant, that sounds garbled. It sounds bad. I did a poor job. That's on me. The podcast sounds crystal clear. That sounds great. That was all muffled because I fat-fingered a button coming back for break. That's on me. But Jesse saying, I got a positive. They won. That's the biggie. That's not the only thing, but it's the biggie for sure. Jesse Temple, you can catch him on The Camp with Zach a couple times a week. Really been enjoying that podcast this season. Lots of good information and good hands-on from the scene of the crime reporting. You can hear him on Ebo's show. He'll be on with Bill tomorrow. And our weekly conversation with Jesse, I think this is our best one yet. Not to gas myself up here. Did I not edit out the check at the beginning? Check. I did not. Okay, well, let me do that now. Here's my conversation with Jesse from earlier today. This is good stuff. Jesse Temple of The Athletic is here. He was in attendance along with our Zach Heilprin. You can hear them on The Camp. It's one of my go-to podcasts this time of year because it's the best Badger information that you can find. Jesse's writing at The Athletic. Excellent as well. Jesse, I want to ask you 2 baseline questions, and you can be as brief as you want in these answers. You can say yes or no if you'd like. I just want to clear up 2 things before I ask you about some specific things from the game on Friday, because it'll kind of help me color my opinions and the other questions. Number 1, is it unfair or inaccurate, in your opinion, to say that Friday night's game looked like the same product that for the most part we watched all of last season?
I think it was a little bit better, but it was not the progress that anybody anticipated, and that's got to be frustrating. So everything in week 1 is sort of an overreaction to some degree, but at the same time, they trailed by a point as late as 4 minutes into the fourth quarter against the MAC team that went 4-8 a year ago. So it's hard not to keep that in my mind.
So small amounts of progress, and you and Zach talked about that. You wrote about that, and I just, again, not as much progress as maybe we thought we would see. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't completely off base there. And then kind of baseline question number 2, is Western Michigan better than we thought? Better than Vegas thought? This was about a 23 to 25 point spread. Did Western Michigan look a lot better than you thought they would?
Maybe, but I don't look at games like this all that much about what the other team is doing unless Western Michigan somehow ends up going 9-3 or 10-2. I think the problem Wisconsin faced to some degree, and Luke Fickell talked about this, was they studied something on film because this staff, the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, were at different schools before, and then what they showed on the field was not what Wisconsin had prepared for. On the other hand, you're Wisconsin. You should be able to dominate because you have better athletes, better players. You can be more physical up front. And I think that was not consistent enough.
Well, and I wanted to clear up those 2 things just to make sure I wasn't completely off base. Because now I actually, we listened to a lot of Luke Fickell sound on my show last night. And I marked down a couple of things that I went back and forth with over listeners about. I said, well, let's ask Jesse about this tomorrow. So Fickell explained after the game, Western Michigan, they came in with a good plan. They stuck with that plan. They executed that plan. I kind of hear that, and maybe it's my fandom brain thinks, well, I'm hearing that they had a better plan than you did, or they stuck to their plan better than you did. Luke Fickell also talked about, our plan was to come in and run the ball and dominate and establish that. And I guess they kind of did, Jesse, but I would also, if that was Luke Fickell's plan, I would have wanted that running game to look a little bit more dominant because they're Wisconsin, like you said. So what did you make of Luke Fickell's, game plan preparation comments after Friday night's game?
I guess I understand the game plan. If you want to be built on toughness and physicality, you want to be able to run the ball. You have Ches Malusi and Tawee Walker who carry about 35 times in that season opener.
Yeah.
Problem is Ches averaged 3.9 yards per carry and Tawee averaged 4.4 yards per carry. And so it just didn't feel like they were able to get a consistent enough push. I know that the passing game, and in particular the deep passing game, was essentially non-existent in part because from what they said, Western Michigan played a little bit different defense, cover 3, trying to take things away down the field. Tyler Van Dyke passed the ball 36 times. Only 3 of those were thrown with 15-plus air yards, and none of those 3 passes were completed.
Yeah.
And I could be okay with that if you are consistently having success with the other throws. They had these moments that stood out. They obviously opened the game with a 16-play drive, 16-play drive, 14-play drive, 14-play drive, but they only scored a touchdown on one of those occasions, and that's just not good enough.
And you need to be able to create explosives, especially against Western Michigan. If they're sitting back, they're in cover 3, or they're trying to keep a lid on Wisconsin's offense, that's fine. Explosives might be hard to come by, but they shouldn't be impossible to come by. And it seemed like they were impossible. You mentioned that statistic, and I was going to bring it up. I'm glad that you did. Of his 36 attempts, which is a lot of attempts, right? Especially given that Luke Fickell said, well, we wanted to come in and run the ball. Like, well, you threw the ball a lot. They ran a lot of plays. They had long drives. Only 3 of them went more than 15 air yards. Who originally coined this, the air raid? Was it media? Was it Phil Longo? I think maybe if it never would have been coined the air raid from the beginning, we would have framed it differently as fans. We would have expected differently as fans. But I mean, even Jesse, if you label it something different, this offense is still underwhelmed, no matter what you call it, right?
Yeah, that's accurate. Look, the air raid thing was a misnomer from the very beginning, and I think Phil tried to establish that point the very first time he talked with us back in January 2023 after he was hired, because he kind of had a big smile on his face when he was asked the very first question about the air raid offense. And he said, essentially what he said was, I would be an idiot not to run the ball at a place like Wisconsin. And his offenses have been predicated on balance with kind of a 50-50 split-ish of run pass. So it's not like what Mike Leach's air raid offenses used to be, where if they ran the ball more than 5 times, he'd just yell at you. But obviously, where he's had success in previous places, it has been a bit of a quick strike offense. They have been able to have explosive plays, and that's something that they're still struggling with right now.
Is it a personnel thing? Because I really like their running back room. Like Walker and Malusi, I think, are great backs, and we've talked a couple times the last few weeks about their depth. Like, that's a running back room they should be able to rotate through, and they should be able to create explosive running plays on the ground. They couldn't do that. I don't know that they have superstar wide receivers, but I mean, they should be able to complete a deep pass or two, especially with an experienced quarterback. I know he's new to the system, but he's been a college quarterback forever. Don't you think that the pieces in this offense are better than what we've seen from the collective sum of the parts?
To be honest, after a full season in one game, I don't know.
Okay.
I just don't. I mean, we saw what Ches could do in the first 4 games last season. I think both those running backs can have better statistical outputs. I don't exactly know what this passing game is going to look like. Yes, there are some of those pieces in place, and I would expect them to take some more deep shots or try to do something to establish that they could be more dynamic in week 2 against South Dakota. If nothing else, to build a little bit of confidence ahead of the Alabama game, though I also understand you may not want to put everything out there for Alabama. But Will Pauling, obviously, great player. Bryson Green has that capability. Tretch Kekahuna has that capability.
Yeah.
I don't know that they've got another guy on the outside that has proven themselves on a consistent basis. And so you need your best players to play their best, but you also need help around them. And they're still trying to figure it out.
We're trying to figure out, I mean, Pauling last year, and then it was everybody else. And that's a conversation that we've had. So they're still looking for that. Man, if the goal coming into a game against a MAC opponent is to establish the run game and to beat them up, I guess I just would have liked it to look a little bit more commanding than it did. They put together long drives, and that's great, but I mean, hit a home run or two, hit a 15 or 20-yard run a little bit more often than they did. Jesse Temple is here from The Athletic. I'm glad that you brought up South Dakota, because that's where I wanted to go to next. Before we talk specifically about South Dakota in this matchup, we were talking Badgers on Bill's show earlier today, and he was asking listeners, what's the thing that concerns you? The one thing, if you had to put your finger on it, if you're not happy with the program and that win wasn't good enough for you, what's the one thing? And for me, it comes down to identity. Like, through one season and one game of Luke Fickell, I'm not really sure where they hang their hat, I guess, on either side of the ball. That seems like a problem. Like, am I barking up the wrong tree there?
No, I think that's completely fair.
Okay.
We knew what the identity was for decades at Wisconsin previously, and for the most part, that was good enough to beat up a lot of opponents, win the games you were supposed to win the games you were supposed to win, and give yourself a chance to win some of those games people didn't believe you could win. And right now, I would agree. I don't necessarily know exactly what this is supposed to look like. I know what I think they want it to look like. I mean, defensively, Mike Tressel had a ton of success at Cincinnati, and obviously they all did because they went to the college football playoff. There are still, I think, concerns there, particularly up front, and how good they can be as a run defense. And it's the same thing offensively. They weren't dominant up front, and if this is supposed to be a passing offense that can have success, they didn't have enough success there. So It's like the things that they believe are supposed to carry them to success are not good enough right now.
They're betwixt and between all these different parts of the offense. It's like, well, I'm not sure they're great. I don't even know that they're very, very good at one individual thing. They just kind of do a little bit of everything. And I'm glad that you mentioned, the identity of past Wisconsin teams and regimes. I think South Dakota, that's a team that knows who they are, right? They had a lot of success in their conference and in the playoffs last year. They went 10-3. That's a team that knows who they are. The spread actually, and not a lot of books have put it out, but this spread, Vegas projects this to be a closer game than Western Michigan. We'll see when you're crossing FBS, FCS, and crossing conferences. We never really know, especially early on. But South Dakota is a team that knows what they're good at, knows what they want to do. Like, this is a team that should present a challenge to Wisconsin, right?
Look, I don't know a lot about South Dakota from a personnel standpoint, but what I do know is the success that they've had and the fact that these kinds of schools specifically give teams fits because, like you said, they have an identity. They're not afraid to come and play a game like this. They played at Missouri a year ago, lost that opener 35-10, but came back and had a very successful season, made the quarterfinals of the playoffs. And so they're going to stick to their brand of football, and Wisconsin is going to have to figure it out. I mean, this is a team that came into the season in South Dakota ranked 5th in the FCS. So I think of, like, I always compare it to an NCAA tournament opening round game where there's a team that got in from a major conference, maybe as like an 8 seed or 7 seed or whatever it may be, as an automatic bid. And they're playing a team that didn't necessarily have massive wins against the so-called Power 4 programs, but they're 30-3.
Yeah.
They're used to winning. They know how to win, and they go and execute their plan. And those, to me, are always the most challenging types of games.
That's a really good comparison. I really like that. Jesse Temple, one last thing. I had a Luke Fickell question. I wrote this down yesterday when we were listening to bits of his postgame press conference. And I get that a lot of times coaches, they go to their press conference, they're just up there to fill time to satisfy their requirement. They're not trying to give away state secrets. So maybe, in sports radio, this is probably a problem. We break these press conferences down and we try to figure out what they mean. And maybe sometimes they mean nothing. But Luke Fickell said yesterday, I wrote down the quote, "We made some adjustments you didn't envision you'd have to make. And they made those adjustments. They ended up winning the game." Did you notice adjustments that they made, like from the first quarter to the fourth quarter? The way I saw it, and maybe this is negative, you tell me, Aaron Witt made an awesome play, and they got lucky with a short field on a punt, which is you and Zach have talked about. That's something that we saw success when the offense got a short field in camp and in practice. That's really their wheelhouse. Did you see adjustments? Luke Fickell talked about that. Did you see this team improve at anything over the course of the game, or did they just kind of end up winning with a couple nice bounces of the ball at the end? I want to revisit that.
I guess I took that to mean they were able to make adjustments to what Western Michigan was doing, which is different from what they planned for.
Sure.
So I don't really look at it necessarily like they made some wholesale change or they did something significantly moving forward. The fact remains that if there had not been a muffed punt in the fourth quarter, Wisconsin very well could have lost that game. They were tremendously fortunate because at the time they were down 14-13. So that's kind of how I read what he was saying. I think Wisconsin certainly is fortunate to win this game. And for the sake of the program, maybe they could learn a lesson about being more consistent, but you have to go execute.
Is it unfair to ask you what the reaction and what the sentiment would be from Badgers media and pundits this week had they lost that game? Say that punt didn't happen. Do you have an idea of, maybe it's unfair, but like, can you try to take your mind there?
Yeah, because it almost happened.
Okay,
and I think everyone in the press box who was on deadline is working on two versions of stories about what happened if they lose. If they lost, of course, it'd be an absolute disaster, an abject failure. I don't know how else you can put it. You're Vegas odds obviously have, the coaches don't control that, but 24-point favorites to lose a game like that, it would say that the program is not headed in the right direction in year two, when we saw Fickell make tremendous strides in year two at Cincinnati. So the good news is, if you're a Badgers fan or a member of the program, that's not what happened, but the way they performed left enough questions open moving forward to have us wonder about whether they'll be able to make enough progress here in year two for people to feel good about the direction of things.
Jesse Temple, love reading your work. Love what you do with Zach as well. Thank you for your coverage. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Grant.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Final segment of the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. Twitter at Wisco Grant. You can always follow along on the live stream, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. The Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills. Appreciate Jesse Temple. That was good stuff. I love his college basketball comparison about the team that's 30-3, and all they know how to do is win, and they come in with a mountain of confidence. That's South Dakota, and I'm curious, I think on top of everything else, to see how this game looks on Saturday. Let's take a call before we wrap up the show. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
I knew it, Eric. Bring us home.
You know, these Badger fans, this is a crowd that is generally not happy, no matter what happens.
Well,
have you noticed that?
The last couple of years. I mean, find me a sports fandom that's thrilled and psyched to be alive all the time. I don't know that you can.
I don't know that you can, and I got to understand something too. I just thought about this, is that I'm listening to like the 1%ers, right?
Sure.
Badger fans, you know, so we got to temper our take based on that. But it just doesn't seem like if the Packers go in or the Vikings go in this weekend, not have a great looking game, and I'll use the Packers because there's a lot of hype, right? Don't have a great game, but win, you're going to go, yes, I'll win.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to satisfy Badgers. It doesn't seem to satisfy. The win doesn't seem to, they don't feel good about a win.
I mean, that's apples and oranges, though.
Yeah.
College football is very different. Western Michigan is not the Philadelphia Eagles. The NFL is so evenly matched, right? If the Packers were 25-point favorites, right? But no, I still think, the NFL is different. But I get your point. They did win. If they would have won in a really exciting back and forth game and they looked to be a better team than last year, then maybe just the win would be enough. But they didn't even look all that good, Eric.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to understand. I'm out here on I-90 trying to understand.
I get it.
Just trying to understand, Grant, and you're helping me all the time.
We're all on I-90 in some way, in some form of our life.
We are.
Hey,
to understand.
By the way, Eric, we got about 30 seconds. I got to tell you this, and then we got to go. But I just locked down a place to stay in mid-October in the district, right outside Coon Valley in Westby for our final little fly fishing gathering of the year. I'm very excited. I think the second or third weekend. Agree. I'm going to, Eric, thank you. We'll talk more about it. I'm going to start and end my summer in Coon Valley. I'm very excited. Get the podcast, follow our channels, watch the live stream. We'll talk tomorrow. Thank you.